Hello everyone, I'm Leah Toms from the marketing team and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. The big question today is your organization quantum ready? And if you're not and you're listening, you're in the right place. We're discussing why waiting is not an option and steps you can proactively take. I have our fellow Jason Sirocco and Tim Callan, our Chief Compliance Officer, here for you today. As always, we're recording this presentation and we'll share it with you after the webinar. And if you've got any questions, we'd love to hear them. Just please use the chat function and we'll answer as many at the end as we can. Jason and Tim, handing over to you.
Thank you, Leah. Hi, Tim Callan here as always. How are you doing today, Jason?
Doing great, Tim.
So we talk a fair amount about quantum computers and the threat they pose to RSA and ECC and what needs to be done about it. One of the, and so, there are a lot of sources for this from you and me. There's our Root Causes podcast. There's other webinars that we have run in the past. What we want to do is we want to focus today on the specific action plan to take. There is a model that we've created here at Sectigo that we call Q.U.A.N.T, which we'll go over. It's easy to remember. And if you follow the Q.U.A.N.T model, this is the action plan we're recommending for enterprises right now. So, let's do the real capsule summary just so everyone's up to speed. Jason, what's the significance of this number 2030?
2030 is, it's interesting how there's been a lot of people trying to figure out when is the point in time at which we have to deprecate RSA and ECC, which are the most widely used cryptographic algorithms for most of what we do today. And I think that 2030 is by just about everybody's model of understanding the rate at which fully gated quantum computers are progressing. This is just about by everybody's estimates is getting to be around the date at which we all feel that we have to be ready for. And it's because of this linear progression of quantum computing, Tim.
Yeah, and that's not really that far away. Like it might seem far away, but we're talking about multi-year initiatives to migrate cryptographic systems, especially something like the ones we have now that are just so ingrained into everything that they're really viewed as a default assumption.
Yes, exactly. I would say if you turn this into real world use cases, any kind of private certificate authority, which is running things such as your Kubernetes clusters, which is providing certificates into your authentication systems. We're also talking about digital signing. And of course, Tim, not the least of which, publicly trusted certificates, which are very, very ubiquitous. All of these things are affected by this.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll just make a point of emphasizing here is this isn't a hard date. So this isn't like Y2K, right? You and I recently did an episode on the Root Causes podcast where we said is Y2Q like Y2K, right? One of the things that we identified was there's not a single discrete moment where everything changes. Rather, there is a spectrum of increasing risk over time. And that risk honestly is already present today. And it's just going to get higher and higher and higher as time goes on.
Yeah, that's the reason why NIST and organizations such as that have been working really hard at trying to figure out, okay, what are the appropriate next cryptographic algorithms? It's not like nothing hasn't happened to this point. There's been a ton of work up to this point, and now it's time for everybody else who's working in the trenches, IT systems, etc., to be aware that a lot of your internal systems are going to be in need of change over the next, let's say 6 years.
Right, which directly brings us to the point that's kind of sitting on this slide, which is that this is now like we've moved this conversation has moved out of the realm of being something that scientists are thinking about and into the realm that's something that enterprise management teams are thinking about and need to have action plans for.
That is correct. You absolutely are in need of plans, and I don't think that those plans should be coming from the technicians within the organization. This really needs to come from people who own the risk, and that's the C-level people.
Right. So a little bit of just a background on where we are. We have our basic algorithms are selected. So there's a key exchange module called ML-Chem, and then there are 3 digital signature algorithms. You see the names of them here. But MLDSA is really the one that's expected to be used most of the time for signatures, and these are ready to go, right? Like these are ML-Chem, MLDSA, and I think it's one of the other 2 DSAs. I think it's SLH DSA are already fully specified, and the last one is coming pretty soon. And so at this point, it's about incorporating this into our technology stacks. But that, of course, is a big deal because encryption goes up and down the stack, and like all the different layers and levers have to work, or the whole thing's not going to work.
That's right, Tim. There's a need for diversity in the mathematics
Mm-hmm.
underneath this. I think that you're going to see a lot more diversity than you had seen in the past, where whether it was RSA or ECC, everything was factorization based. This is a very new world that we're entering here, Tim.
Yeah, and so enterprises need to deal with this, and so let's focus in particular on digital certificates because encryption doesn't only occur in digital certificates, but without the digital certificates, we can't have anything that remotely approaches a comprehensive use of these cryptographic algorithms. So this becomes a really important thing. So now that the algorithms are done and they're delivered and they're specified and they came out of NIST, what happens is the IETF now has to build standards around this. So they have to figure out all the real specific things about how the communication occurs and what the morphology of these is, and all that needs to be handled. And then when we get a new set of standards from IETF, those then turn around and those flow down for public certificates. Like at that point, you're ready to do. If you want to do private certificates, you just can. If you want to do support for those, like in your software stack, you just can. If you want to actually release a public cert, then there's another step, which is that the bodies that govern public certs are going to need to be involved as well. So this is root programs, the CA Browser Forum, and ETSI. And all of these are going to need to have requirements that will be put in place so that a public CA like Sectigo can issue a certificate that a subscriber like you on the webinar can actually take and put in your systems. And until that's in place, we don't have standard understanding of protocols. And so interoperability is not a thing. And that needs to be done before there will be one. And at the same time, if this is going on, we're going to need to see widespread adoption of this support. So again, the good news is these standards are complete or near complete. And as they come together, now you can imagine the various people who have software and hardware that use these certificates, server vendors, people like that, operating system vendors, will be able to take these standards and write software and QA it and iron out the bugs and all of those steps, at the end of which they will be able to release software and update problems with patches that will actually allow these cryptographic algorithms to work. Because right now, everything that we have today was designed without these cryptographic algorithms in mind. And that is going to, that's a necessary step. So once those steps are done, once you have support in the environments and the applications that you use, and you have the ability to get the certificates that you need, either privately or publicly, that's when an organization will be able to begin deployment. So that's still a little ways off, right?
It's a little ways off, Tim, but I think that there's a lot of people still who I've been speaking to and who might be listeners to this podcast and will ask questions or make assumptions that, hey, we're still waiting for NIST to do something.
Right.
And people aren't quite sure what they mean when they say that,
Mhm.
but they know that they still just have to wait.
Mhm.
And the reality is the waiting is mostly over for
Yeah.
in the sense that the algorithms are available. What we need to do now is finalizing the standardization and then get to work in terms of implementing those standardizations. And so we're very, very close here, Tim.
Yeah, and we can get to work right now, right? And that's one of the important points. Like one might be tempted to say, well, nothing for me to do. I guess I'm going to go do something else and work on this later. But that's not true. There is actually a great deal of productive action that enterprises not only can be taking today, but they really need to be taking today if they want to stay on pace, right? And I think we've covered this slide. And so that's an important thing that we'll return to in a second. Before we do, we should probably explain the harvest and decrypt scenario because it's really important for everyone to get because the urgency really is now. What Tell us about harvest and decrypt?
Sure, Tim. You as an enterprise have a lot of information that is flowing across various forms of transmissions, right? Whether it's SSL protected streams between web browsers and web servers, it could be between IoT devices, it could be between servers and traditional laptop users. It could be any number of things, and you have a lot of that information that is stuff that is encrypted. Thank goodness. Things are being encrypted right now at rates much higher than they were in the past, and that's a good thing. The problem is that the bad
Mhm.
guys are already on the inside. They are recording these streams of information that are encrypted. They're safe at the moment. They won't be protected and safe at a certain point in the future. You have
Right.
to ask yourself how much information is being transmitted across these systems that if they were decrypted in the future would be a problem for you.
Right.
And
And then
and
that in the future thing is real important, Jay. Like something that's not gonna matter. Your 12-month product roadmap is not a secret to be very worried about because by the time it can be encrypted, those products already will have been released, right? So think about secrets that you still want to be secret in 10 years or 20 years. Those are the ones to worry about. And if they're valuable and someone can just grab them and store them because storage is pretty cheap, put good metadata around them and know that they will still be valuable when they're unlocked in 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, then that is a thing that can sincerely happen. And that's a sincere risk. And so those are the first secrets that you're going to want to get onto PQC as fast as you conceivably can, right?
I would say that this is a part of the inventory taking that's
Mm-hmm.
important as part of any security measure. You have to understand what your crown jewels are before you can protect them. And if you go through the inventory exercise of saying, what am I encrypting in transit right now with RSA and ECC that I just cannot allow to be decrypted at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Figure that out for yourselves. And that is part of today's inventory exercise that you have to do for post quantum. It's not just figuring out where are all my cryptographic assets. It's what are the secrets that I'm protecting right now that I need to harden first.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a widely understood opportunity. This has been covered a great deal in a lot of press. So, in the event that there is an attacker who is sufficiently advanced and sufficiently resourced, who is trying to get at your critical secrets, you need to assume that they're aware of this as a potential strategy, right? Doesn't mean that there's someone who's doing this to you, but it means that if somebody is in there and those kinds of secrets are present in your organization, that absolutely is a strategy that's available to them and they know about it. So, we need to treat this as a very real threat. And badly, unfortunately, it's a real threat where you make decisions now and you don't know the results of those decisions for a while, which is too bad, but it also is the situation that we can't really change. So to help organizations with this, we have come up with a model we call Q.U.A.N.T. That's nice, easy to remember, and this is the full journey from where we are today to having a completely PQC or quantum safe profile. Um, and what we want to do is just walk through the steps in this today. And I'm going to clarify that for you as an organization right now, you'll be focusing on the first three letters, right? Q.U.A. is what we're doing at present. N and T are going to be, implementation and maintenance that the industry isn't ready for yet, that the technology isn't ready for yet. But, and this is a key point, you have to do Q and U and A before you can use N and T. So if you sit around and you wait until the day when everything is buttoned up and then crack your knuckles and say, well, better start working on this post-quantum crypto thing, and if it then takes you 18 months to get through Q.U.A., you're 18 months late to protecting yourself from that harvest and decrypt attack compared to where you could have been. And so a lot of what we're talking about is there is work for you to do today, even though the algorithms are not implemented in the technology you use. There is work for you to do today. And if you do that work today, that will help you in the future. And if you neglect that work, you may very well regret that in the future. Is that rightly said, Jason?
It is. It absolutely is. And there's a lot of subtlety and there's a lot of thinking through what that actually is. But it needs to be stated simply, and that's what you've done.
Okay, so Q. Q, as we've said, this is your quantum exposure inventory. This is what you described as inventorying your cryptography, right? Got to know what you have. What crypto do you have? Where is it? How do you use it? U is uncover risk. You need to understand what are the secrets, where are those secrets, and how bad are those secrets in terms of the profile of value and longevity, or damage to me and longevity. The third then is based on that, you make a prioritized stack ranked list of things to work on, right? You assess and strategize and build your strategy for what to do about this. So you can do this in an approachable way that prioritizes top priority things, and still gets everything done. Then there's navigate implementation. Go do that work. And finally, track and manage is, this is going to keep going and we're going to keep doing this forever. So when we put this together, we get the quant model. So let's start with quantum exposure inventory. And you already talked about this, Jason. Inventorying my crypto, what does that look like?
For those of you who are most used to publicly trusted certificates, it's, hey, what are all the certs that I use right now? Right? It's as simple as that. For those of you who aren't doing things such as discovery, you're going to need to do discovery to make sure
Yeah.
you know where all of your certificates are. And in fact, I would even go as far as to say what's necessary for this in the future is full automating and managing of all of your publicly trusted certificates. In other words, utilizing a certificate lifecycle management system to know where everything is and what its context is. But it goes far beyond that in terms of certificate lifecycle management. You probably also need and want to use one of the pillars of CLM, visibility right
Yeah.
across all of your private trust certificates as well. And that includes the systems such as Microsoft CA, other private CAs you may have, private CAs you might be running in the cloud. This is a huge inventory exercise of all the places with which you are using cryptographic assets. And
Yeah.
I think that for most organizations, you might be very surprised about how long that list is.
And one point you just made about the visibility there that I want to build on that a little is this isn't a snapshot. This is an ongoing running current inventory because whatever you have cryptography you have running today on this day in late June is not necessarily the same as what you will have running in a month or a year. And so not only do you need to figure out what you have now, but this isn't a one and done. It's about maintaining an ongoing current cryptographic bomb, if you will, that is always accurate to the best of your knowledge.
That is 100% correct, Tim. You
Yeah.
you are currently right now probably in the midst of building out new systems, net new systems that are currently testing, ramping up, ramping down various kinds of container objects. Uh, you might have brand new Kubernetes clusters on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. All of these things need to be on this list of inventory because all of them consume certificates. They are all utilizing TLS certificates for the purposes of authentication, uh, and therefore
Mhm.
those are net new systems that are happening all the time. You might
Yeah.
have net new systems, Tim, that are using digital signatures within your finance department, within your um, HR department, new processes, new systems within those departments that you as an IT department might not even be aware of. You need to be aware of in this inventory, Tim. This is the whole point. These systems and processes are changing constantly in every organization. This needs to be a living document.
Yeah, and then the other thing that you didn't say it, you were getting close to it, so I'll say it is, um, think one of the big things that goes on we see in enterprises routinely is the concept of rogue certificates. So somebody who isn't part of the PKI Center of Excellence, who isn't rolling up to whoever owns that, who's often a different role like development or some kind of skunkworks role or working for a different department just gets their own certs and moves forward and doesn't tell anybody or doesn't tell you that that has occurred. And those are liabilities as well. Those are potentially vulnerable parts of your ecosystem also. And so as you're maintaining this inventory, think about your strategies for finding these rogue certs or these rogue CAs even and bringing them in to your own purview and your own management.
Remember, certificate lifecycle management, that discovery capability really
Yeah.
goes a long way to helping with those rogue certificates.
So you build and you maintain this constant current pretty up-to-date inventory of your cryptography. And you get to the point where your organization is just tooled and habituated to do that. And that leaves you ready to start to attach uh, 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 priorities to projects. But before you do that, you need to understand the other part of this, which is the risk, right? So this is about saying, okay, what are my secrets? Where are they? And again, these two things we talked about before. What is the longevity of a secret? And what is the damage to my organization if that secret gets out? And it's not quite this simple, but it's almost like you could give the longevity a rating where higher means that the secret needs to remain secret for longer. You could give the damage a rating where higher means the damage is more. Multiply those two numbers, stack rank the results, and you pretty much have a pretty good list of what the worst things would be. And that can, with some nuance and some refinement, basically be your prioritized list, right?
Yeah, you got it, Tim. I
Yeah.
think that this is, if you do nothing else, folks, this is, I think, as part of your inventory work, I think that if you're going to prioritize your work, this understanding of your risks is truly soul searching within your organization. If this is something your organization has not done yet, it's something that you need to do. And it's really and truly from a security aspect, uh, it should be at the top of the list from any security thinking that you do within your
Yeah.
organization.
And I think we find that in a lot of organizations, this sort of exercise has never been done for the simple reason that encryption was homogeneous, widely available, easy, and inexpensive. And so instead of this, there was a different focus, which was, well, just encrypt everything, encrypt it now, encrypt as much
Yeah.
as you can, which is great from a defense and depth perspective, right? If someone gets into my network and they can't get my secrets because they're encrypted at rest, or they're encrypted in transit internally, fantastic, right? It's a great method. But one of the consequences of that is that people haven't had to think in these terms of prioritizing and prioritizing according to these criteria. So this is going to be a new way that your organization is thinking. And this is not going to be what the project managers or the engineers or the operations managers, this isn't how they're used to thinking. And you're going to have to teach your organization to look at risks this way.
It's interesting, Tim. We're not asking anybody to do something that's extremely unusual here.
Mhm.
Hopefully, what I'm really hoping is that a lot of organizations, through their normal security work, have done a lot of this already. But now with quantum, it's no longer an option. This has to be
Right.
done.
There you go. Then when those two are together, you have what you need to go back and build this strategy. So you understand where your cryptography is and what it looks like. You understand where your risks are, where your secrets are, and what they look like. You can take those, put it all together, and say, based on this, I can turn around and build my actual action plan. And that's what we're saying here. You take this information, you you actually put one more piece into this, which is what's involved in implementing. And putting the three of those things together, now you can come up with a real action plan with steps and Gantt charts and gating items and all that stuff.
You got it, Tim.
Yeah.
This is really, really critical work to synthesize. Assessing and strategizing are all part of this, but I really think as an organization, you guys know best about how all of this has to come together. But I'm going to add something here, Tim,
Okay.
that's probably not said, which is this is a good time within this quant model. This is probably one of the best times to start engaging with your security partners. And that means companies such as Sectigo reach out and talk to people who are experts in the field about putting together these kinds of plans. In other words, here are the list of cryptographic use cases that I
Mhm.
have. What is the best way to go into the future in terms of building out new forms of discovery, visibility, new forms of private certificate authorities that can handle the future-proof me, and also, of course, the publicly trusted certificate side of things, working hand in hand with your trusted security partner and certificate authority partner in order to be able to do this kind of synthesis and plan for the future.
I think that's a great point, Jay. And building on that, something parallel to that is not only your trusted security partners, but what are your vendors doing, right? Like you have a set of chosen vendors, and today none of those vendors have PQC support, and they're all going to have to get there. So what are they doing? Are they working on this? When is this coming on their roadmaps? When are they expecting to have it? What form is that going to take? Is that just going to be a software patch? Are you going to have to do something more extreme than that? And all of that needs to be clarified too, because all you need is a technology vendor who doesn't, update their system and you've got to change your plans pretty significantly.
Oh goodness, yes. I'm gonna call it right out, Tim. Your
Hmm.
HSM vendors for your private certificate authorities, they've got a lot to tell you. So,
Yeah, yeah. For
so
instance.
yeah, for just a for instance, and there's going to be a lot more than just that. So, that's why I bring it up. Your vendors and your security partners, these are the people you need to be speaking to at this point in the model.
Yeah, and then this last bullet here probably just deserves 10 seconds, which is don't expect that there's going to be a sudden day when you turn everything off and put in your PQC and turn everything back on. What's really going to happen is over the course of a long time, and I mean years, you're going to be running both kinds of cryptography side by side. And what we hope to see is that that pie chart is going to change over time from a tiny little sliver of PQC, and it's going to get bigger. It's going to pass the 50% threshold. Somewhere along the line, you're going to have a tiny little sliver of traditional, and then somewhere along the line, you're going to make a hard decision and you're going to rip out that last resisted stuff. And that's how to imagine this. So don't think of this as an all or nothing. Don't think of this as if I can't get everything done, I might as well not get anything done. Rather, think of this as a whole series of deliverables that cause that pie chart to creep around and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what you want to do is you want to move that around the process until PQC is the whole circle.
Thanks for that, Tim.
All right, so then we get to navigate, right? This is where we're actually going to run this. So once we know what our action plan is, then we have to start actually implementing, right? This is where we do, like we said, we do the software updates we were talking about. We figure out any hardware that's non-compliant. What's our strategy with that? We think about our ecosystems and our integration roadmaps between these things, and go actually do the work. Um, and there's just a few bullets here of things to think about, but that's the main thing that you're looking at here. In terms of certificates, this is where you talked about it, Jay. This is where something like a CLM is really important, or something like an automation solution, something for a lot of people, it's probably Acme, is really important, because these things will make this implementation less painful, faster in terms of calendar time, and more reliable in terms of being done correctly. And those are all really good reasons to focus on it.
Yeah, Tim, I think that this is where the rubber hits the road, and I think that we cannot ignore certificate lifecycle management within this part of the model, because this is how you're actually going to operationalize these kinds of things.
Hmm.
The automation technology, I mean, integrations itself is one of the pillars of CLM. Things like compliance come from having visibility, one of the pillars of CLM. This is where those of you who have been managing cryptographic assets in a very willy-nilly way, not having full visibility, not having fully managed certificates, public or private, I think that that's an end of an era where you have unmanaged certificates that you don't have visibility to.
Yeah,
Certificate lifecycle management automation is going to be part of this future.
yeah, agreed on that. Absolutely. And then finally, we move into track and manage. So this is just, look, it's never over, right? And so, now you're going to need to move into a normal kind of ongoing maintenance of this cryptography. You're going to have to make sure it's current. You're going to keep moving it ahead. Nobody thinks that this is the last time we'll ever make a change to our cryptography in our lives. And so, ensuring that you're agile and that you are current and that you're safe and secure with your crypto just needs to be part of what you do as an organization moving forward.
Tim, I want to underline this concept of agility, cryptographic agility specifically. You and I just recorded a podcast, very important one, right? I want everybody to listen to, where the outcome of it was the days of having rock solid, never changing RSA and ECC is probably at an end.
Yeah.
And the idea that you will have never ever have to think about changing your cryptographic algorithms is probably over in the post-quantum world.
Yeah.
The
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. The reality is that you will have to be ready to swap out your cryptographic algorithms in the post-quantum world. That's just the reality of it, which makes tracking and managing that much more important than it ever was.
And so let me point out in this model that the other thing is, don't think of these as 5 discrete steps and you move from step 1 to step 2. This is the order they happen in general, but some of these things are going to be happening simultaneously. So you're going to be implementing in some parts of your organization while you're done in others. And so in some environments or some, processes, you might be sitting at a track and management stage, while in another progress, you're at a navigate implementation stage, or maybe perhaps even in an assess and strategize stage. And this is how it's going to go in the real world. So it's useful to think about it this way. I'm not going to have one track that everything's on. I'm going to have a series of tracks. Different things are going to be on the tracks. They're all going to have their own Gantt chart. They're all going to have their own delivery, and those deliveries are going to be at different times and perhaps at radically different times. And that means I'm going to have to be in a different mode. I'm going to have to be in a development mode or an assessment mode for one part of my business while I'm already in a maintenance mode for a different, presumably more vulnerable, more critical part of my business.
You're absolutely right, Tim.
All right. So Jason and I, as we referenced a couple times in this webinar, we talk about this kind of thing a lot. And the main place we talk about it is the Root Causes PKI and Security podcast. We've been doing this podcast for 5 years. We're nearing our 400th episode. We talk about digital certificates, automation, management, connected topics, and absolutely post-quantum cryptography. And we track the news items as they occur. We have expert guests on. Most weeks we publish 2 episodes, and we would love to have you come join us. So just search for Root Causes Podcast, and we should be the top result you get wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And with that, Leah, I think we're ready for questions.
Yes, thank you, Tim. We have a couple. If an attacker might have already stolen my secrets on old vulnerable encryption to unlock later, what can I do about that?
Right. So you're saying this is the harvest encrypt scenario that we talked about earlier. And as we said, people might be doing this now. That's a tough one. This is the scenario we want to avoid because there isn't a lot you can do about it. And so what we want to do is we want to prevent that from coming about in the first place. And the way we prevent that from coming about in the first place is we make sure we're agile about getting this stuff swapped out. We get it swapped out in a timely fashion. And when our software is ready, we deploy it. When our certificates are ready, we deploy them. And we prioritize the same way that Jason and I talked about. Get the worst secrets first, because if it happens that a very advanced bad guy got into your network, got your single best secrets, captured those things, and is going to sit and is prepared to sit on them for 10 years until they can unlock them, there isn't really a lot you can do. So we need to prevent that from occurring.
Yeah, prevention is key. I am worried. I am worried about people right now who are having their secrets recorded that will be decrypted at a certain point in time. This to me is an important part of the inventory process. Go through a tabletop exercise and assume everything you do in your organization is being recorded. Now, remember, it's encrypted right now. You can consider it safe for the moment. What you should be doing is understanding in that 2030 timeframe, what are things that you're transmitting right now? Assume that they are being recorded and assume that they will be in the hands of the bad guy in 2030. And then you have at least a list of things to mitigate between now and then. That's the best you can do about it right now until you have actually mitigated truly the harvest and decrypt problem.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Cool. The next question is there a limit on how long we'll be able to use hybrid cryptography?
No.
So no, I mean, eh, yeah, there's no reason to believe that like that standard would be deprecated or we wouldn't be allowed to permit a hybrid certificate at some date in the future or anything like that. I would say you've got to be you have to have a plan to get off it though, right? Because if you just let the RSA and ECC linger forever, essentially you're letting the vulnerability linger forever. And one of the things that I worry about is that, there's a certain amount of momentum and people are full of spit and vinegar and they get going and they get halfway there and then they get distracted by shiny things and they lose focus and priorities change and stuff gets defunded and you just kind of sit there using this vulnerable cryptography long after you don't need to.
I
And that's risk.
but I'd like to add to that, Tim, which is I think hybrid does not just mean sticking with classic algorithms. It might be the way with which we will enable cryptographic agility even between various forms of post-quantum algorithms in the future. So even if you deprecate ECC and RSA, there is still going to be a need and a usage for hybrid certificates even past that point. So please don't consider hybrid certificates, everybody, as being just RSA and ECC usage. They will live long into the world of PQC algorithms.
That's a great point. Great point.
Cool. Another question is, when will I be able to get PQC certificates for my own use in production?
Mm. Yeah, that's the magic question. We not long ago had a podcast with Boss Vesterbon of Cloudflare, who very much is a PQC expert. We had this conversation on the episode, and I think we were all forecasting that perhaps late 2026, you would be able to get a public certificate that you could install and use in your production environments, which would mean that for private PKI, presumably that would be happening sooner.
Yeah, Tim, I would say that if you want to get your hands dirty, and I mean that in a tongue-in-cheek and very friendly way, if you want to get your hands dirty with private certificate authorities right now that are post-quantum,
Mm-hmm.
look, the answer is get a hold of Sectigo and technology to start to do that is in our hands. The ability to talk through the use case specifically that you want to deal with and to start mitigating for harvest and decrypt is something that we can engage in that conversation right now. And the ability to actually build a proof of concept private certificate authority, even along with a if you want to start dealing with vendors who have HSMs that are capable with that, we're going to be able to do that in a very, very short order. So I would say get a hold of us and we'll start that conversation.
Sorry. And then we have another one. Can I use PQC right now in a sandbox environment to figure out how it works?
Well, that's kind of what Jason, I think, was alluding to. The main problem, the answer is yes. The main problem with that is that the stuff you might want to be using it with isn't necessarily going to work because it was written without PQC in mind. So if you say, okay, I'm going to isolate a network and I'm going to throw my same systems on there that I use in the real world production, and I'm going to try to use some PQC in there, the trouble is that that software you're using in that environment you're using just might not support it at all. So we absolutely have seen organizations have done this, and they tend to be very well-researched organizations that can do custom development. Because at this stage, it really depends on custom development. That is coming. You just need to understand what is going to be required for you to do that. And just thinking that you're going to clone your existing environment and just start throwing these certs in there, it's not going to be that simple.
Great. And another one has just come in. Would you be running current PKI and quantum PKI at the same time?
Yeah, I think absolutely, right? And that's what we're trying to reference before, because what's going to happen, there's a few reasons why that's going to happen. One is that you will not have that all your system support isn't going to come at the same time, right? Your vendors are going to have to do upgrades. They're going to have to give you patches or more significant upgrades. You're going to have hardware that perhaps needs to be replaced, right? You may not be able to do a firmware upgrade. You just might have to pull that box out and put a new one in. And so this stuff is going to get phased in over time for you. And what you don't want to do is sit around and wait. So what you need to do is be phasing in the PQC, PKI as you're able to. Number one, because you don't want to have a big catastrophic waterfall release. And number two, because you don't want to wait around, right? You want to start getting the benefit, the security benefit of this. So what you're going to have to do pragmatically is you're going to have some of both. And you'll have some of both for a long time. And I'm predicting that most organizations will start out with a little bit of PQC and a lot of RSA ECC. And then over the span of a couple years, we'll migrate to a lot of PQC and a little bit of RSA ECC. And that, that is just going to be how you live. Does that mean you'll actually be running more than one PKI next to each other? It may. And that might be another thing that you just kind of have to get used to. And then again, hopefully somewhere along the line, you can take that old RSA one and shut it off, but not right away. And so, yeah, that's probably what most of us are going to have to do, pragmatically speaking.
Okay, great. I think that is all the questions done. So yeah, finishing a little bit early today.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Real quick. We do have an ebook, Embracing Quantum Readiness. You can find it at sectigo.com/download content. Please go look there if you want to get more of this. It does go over the quant framework and define the various terms, and it's a nice way to start to model how you're going to approach this problem.
Exactly that. Thank you, Tim.
All right.
Thank you everyone for your time, and thanks Jason and Tim. If you've got any more questions, do get in touch with the Sectigo team directly. If you like this webinar, keep an eye on our website where we announce upcoming webinars. But for now, thank you and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.